Alright guys, let's get to the lab. So let's decide which base code folder we're going to be using. I'm going to open T21, and just from, hopefully you guys are getting the gist of how to choose your base code folder, but I'll still walk you guys through it for now. And if you look at the lab, it says translate rectangle with click. And so I can see the word rectangle and already kind of assume that it's going to be the graphics base code, but you know, I can go inside to notes to double check to the PDF. And here I can see draw, which is, you know, a rectangle, right? And going further down, oh, I can see, you know, mouse controller and all this stuff that's inside the graphics base code folder. So that's what it's calling for. So let's get that. I'm going to click it, Control C, you guys know the drill. I'm going to copy it onto my desktop and go inside. Alright, so before I get into the core of today's lesson, which is an introduction to scope, I want to go over methods, okay? Methods run a block of code when they are called. And methods are called through a method's name followed by parentheses. So I can show you guys right now. Let's make a rectangle. This is stuff you guys have already done, so I'm not going to go over it too much. So all I did was make a rectangle, you know, at x equals 200, y equals 200, with a height and width of 200, which is actually a square in this case. And underneath, I'm going to draw it, right? Because this is how you draw the rectangle. And this is the method. I know I introed you guys to methods before, and I gave you guys that noun-verb comparison, where myRect is the noun and draw is the verb. But yeah, this is what I mean by the method name followed by parentheses. Okay, so let's print this just to see where our rectangle is, or square. And you can tell it's sort of in the middle of the screen, and its placement is important because we're going to be learning one new method today called the translate method. Okay, so kind of remember where this square is, and I'm going to go back. And if you guys have taken a math class, translate means like to move, right? Like when you translate a function, you're just moving the function on the graph around. And I'm gonna say myRect dot translate. Okay, but how far do we want it to translate? How do we tell the program how far up and down and left and right I want to move my square? And we do this through parameters. And what parameters are in methods are like extra variables that let you manipulate your method better. So in this case, and parameters always go between the two parentheses in a method, right? In this case, the translate takes in two parameters, a double for its x coordinate and a double for its y coordinate. So let's fill that in. So let's say I want it to move 200 to the right and 200 down. Okay, so I'm gonna save and compile and run. Okay, now you can tell the square used to be in the middle, but now it's in the bottom right. Okay, but what's really the point of translating it here? Why can't I just tell myRect to be, you know, 400 and 400? Well, I can, but today we're going to be using one more method called the onMouse method. I know I'm calling this a method and calling these methods as well, which can be confusing, but this is how you call a method. I'm calling the translate method and I'm calling the draw method, right? So somewhere inside the package folder that's inside of here, somewhere inside of here that you guys don't have to care about whatsoever, this public void, whatever this weird thing is at the bottom, it exists somewhere else that you guys just haven't written. And the way you call it is through .translate, all right? And in onMouse click, if you guys can, you know, kind of guess, this method fires whenever I click, right? And because Java's event driven, every time I click, this block of code is fired. And what I wanted to do is let's say I wanted to translate every time I click. So logically, I'd grab that statement and put it down here. Let's set this to like 10 and 10 so it doesn't go too far every time I click. So I'm gonna save and I'm gonna compile here. Oops, wrong folder. Uh-oh. And I'm going to compile here. And it's going to say cannot find symbol. And the reason why it says this is because of scope. It's a part of variables that you guys are going to learn today. The main focus of today's lesson is scope. And what scope means is, scope is like a region in which a variable can be called. And all variables have a scope. And the way they are defined is through their placement in your program. I just said a whole bunch of things right now, but I think it's easier to show you guys. So when I declare, right, I'm using my vocabulary. So this is your declaration, your left side of the equal sign, and your initialization, the right side of your equal sign, right? Your naming and your value. When I declare my rect inside of public static void main, my rect will be used in public static void main, right, logically. And the problem with this is that it doesn't know what my rect is, and that's what the error is trying to tell us. What is my rect? Well, my rect is declared here, but on mouse click can't see that. So the solution for this, and let me tab this in one more so it's a little clear, so everything's lined up, is for me to grab this line. I'm gonna copy it, and I'm gonna put it up here. Okay, and then I'm gonna get rid of this rectangle. And what this is doing is I'm creating a global variable. So this is a new vocabulary. Sometimes it's called an instance variable. And the reason why it's called global is because this variable can be seen globally, right, throughout this program. And like I said earlier, the scope of a variable is defined through their placement. And there's a trick to this. And the trick is, if I want my rect to be called in both main and on mouse click, I want this variable to be seen by both of them, right? And I do this by declaring it between the two braces that hold these methods, okay? And because main and on mouse click both are surrounded by these braces, I want my rect to be surrounded by those braces as well. Now, if I only wanted my rect to be called inside main, all I have to do is declare it in here, right? Where I say rectangle, my rect. But in this case, my rect down here in on mouse click can't see this rectangle. That's why I'm declaring it up here as a global variable. So now let's save and go back to compile. Oh, this is one thing I forgot. You guys haven't learned the lesson on static yet, so for now you just kind of have to accept it for what it is. And I'm gonna put static in front of this. I'm not gonna go in depth to what this means. For now, just stick with me. Alright, so I'm gonna save and compile. That's what that error meant, the non-static variable or whatever it said. So I'm gonna run. Now every time I click on this screen, it should translate. Okay, and now every time I click, it's moving down to the bottom right, little by little. Alright, and if I wanted to move, let's say I wanted to move back, left and down, right? Maybe I want to do like 20, so it moves more down than it does left. I can do that as well. I can compile and run. I can click. Uh-oh. What happened here? Oh, I forgot to save. Oops. Try that one more time. And now every time I click, it's going to be moving down and left. And this is why parameters are so important. All I have to do is to change these two numbers, and what that does is it changes the whole way translate is used. So parameters are a very, very important part of methods, and sometimes methods can't even be used without the correct parameters in them. So how do you decide the scope of a variable? Well, as I said earlier, you decide the scope of the variable with where you're going to use the variable in. So if I wanted to make a string in here, my string, and say hello world, and system.out.println my string. Uh-oh, I put strings. Alright, and if I save this and I run, you guys all know what happens. We've done this many times before. And here it'll say hello world. But what if I wanted to say hello world every time I clicked my mouse? Well, I can't system.out.print my string in here. because I'm gonna get the same error. String was declared in main, so I'm gonna have to declare it outside of it and make it a not static, make it a global variable. Alright, so I'm getting rid of string here, and the reason why I'm getting rid of string there is because I'm declaring it up here, and you declare with your data type, and because the variable name is already made, I only need the variable name down here. And so now if I get rid of the system.out.println string, I save, compile, and run. Now every click it should say hello world, right? So now look, I get a bunch of hello worlds every time I click. Perfect. Alright, so now let's get down to the lab. Alright, so let's close this all out. Now I'm going to delete this folder. Let's go to notes, PDF. Alright, so let's scroll to the bottom. And it says, make your rectangle object move each time the mouse is clicked. Oh, small hint. I just did the lab for you guys. But try doing it on your own if you guys want to. Try not just copying my code word for word. It's always good to try making your own code and try making it move in like wacky directions. I don't know. It's up to you guys. So yeah, that's the end of today's lesson and lab tutorial, I guess. Good luck, guys.